Some of you have asked for it, now you'll get it. Gradual rasterization with Affinity Photo. Let's start. Gradual rasterization is quite good if you want to have full control over the different objects in the design, or if you want to blend in some smoke, light or glow effects. It also is quite good for some photographic images. It has some limitations, like it will only work on black garments. It does require Affinity Photo, not Affinity Designer software, and you also need some basic graphic design knowledge, as it's not as straightforward as the rasterization in ProRip. Some alternatives are Adobe Photoshop if you have that, ProRip with the partial rasterization done by opacity changes, or ProRip Essentials with the point and click feature for partial rasterization. Once we've opened Affinity Photo, we're going to click on File, then on New, then this window here will pop up. This is a preset for my designs. This is A3 sheet size, or 11 by 17, 300 dpi, seen by K color, transparent background. Once everything is set, click on Create. Now that we have our transparent canvas, the first thing I'm going to do is to draw a rectangle over it. This here is now a white rectangle. We're going to recolor it into black. We make a perfect black by using CMYK, everything at 100%. Now we have a black rectangle. We're going to copy that, so we have two, and the lower layer will be locked. Now we will drag and drop in all our design elements. I will work with one space background, plus some raccoons and some text. If your design only consists out of one layer, the entire image will be rasterized. If you have several layers, like in this example, you can decide which layers should be rasterized and which one should stay solid. It may happen that we have blacks in our design itself. So if we remove the background, we can see here in my space design that the space design by itself contains some black. This black is quite often that perfect black, which is CMYK everything at 100%. So it might make sense to just remove it before we continue. To remove a black background is quite simple. You just click on the layer, right click, hit rasterize. The symbol changes now. Then you click on select, selected sample colors, click on the colors that you want to remove. Now this slider here comes up. The image by itself becomes a little bit fuzzy. It indicates how much of the black you are going to remove, or how much of similar colors you're going to remove. Hit apply once you're happy. I'm staying here with 15%. Hit backspace. Now the black is removed. To control it, you can just disable the black background that we placed in, and almost all the black parts are gone now from the space background. Rasterization works best with images that have a lot of contrast. To increase the contrast, best is to just select the layer, then go down to Adjustments, which is the circle over here. Click on Brightness and Contrast. Then this menu pops up with two new sliders. We can move them around. And you will also see that a new layer was added above the space background, which simply means that the brightness and contrast will be influenced by everything that is underneath this brightness and contrast layer. So in this case, just the space background. Let's just look at the different elements here. Our three different raccoons have been three different files, so you can see that the colors are different, the contrast levels are different, so we can adjust these now. So we're going to the upper one, increase the contrast here, and we can see that the background changes as well. So what we do on the raccoon has also impact on our background. If we don't want that, we just make a group and group the adjustment layer, which is the contrast layer, and the image together. We just mark them both, Ctrl G, or right click and then group. And now the contrast changes are only applied to the raccoon itself, not to the layers underneath. Our main goal here is to get the dark areas really dark, so not a muddy black but a real black. The darker something is, the more likely it is to be taken out later on when we rasterize our design. We can now do all these changes to all the different layers. Once we're happy with our changes, we just mark everything, including one of the black squares, and create a group. If you don't want to rasterize something like the text, we just keep the text out. So we make sure that the text is above the group. So this is our final design. I've changed the text a little bit and adjusted the colors slightly. So we can see we have two text layers above the group, so these will not be rasterized. And within the group we have a couple of layers, also some additional text layers. These additional text layers are simply, let's just zoom in, these glow effects, like the outline with a glow effect. I want to rasterize the glow effect but not the text itself, so if I turn this on and off, you can see it just affects the glow effect itself, and if I take the upper layer, it's only the text but not the glow effect. The same goes for the upper text. Also here we have separated the outline, which has the glow effect, from the inside that we want to keep solid. So just as a quick reminder, everything in the group is supposed to get rasterized. So take a look if everything that you want to rasterize is within the group, including the black background here. And once you're ready, we start with the process. To start the process of rasterization, we go to adjustments down here, the semicircle, we click on black and white, and now everything in the group is black or white. You can see there are different shades of gray, some parts are really dark, some parts are really light. And we also see this color slider here on the right hand side with different colors. If we play with the different sliders, we move them from left to right, we can see that some areas get lighter or darker depending what slider we choose. Dark areas will be rasterized stronger and light areas will be kept more solid. This function will be explained a little bit better on a simple example later on in the video. For now, let's just keep everything at 100 and move on with the next step. Next step, click on the hourglass symbol, which is called Live Filters, search for halftone, and as soon as we click it, everything will be halftoned or rasterized. Right now this looks a little bit odd, so we're going to change a few settings here. So contrast should be 100, so we move the slider all the way to the right. Then we have cell size in the drop down menu over here. On the drop down we use rounds. And then here on cell size, this is our frequency as we know it in ProRib. To have a translation, just open the calculator. We have 300 dpi, so we're going to type in 300. And then the frequency that we want or that we are used to from ProRib. In this case, 27 frequency or 27 LPI. This gives us a value of 11.1, so we're going to type in 11 at cell size, which equals roughly 27 frequency if we would do it in ProRib. Instead of round dots, we can also select lines. To select lines, we just go to this drop down menu over here, we find lines, click on that, and now we have horizontal lines. Zoom in so we can see them a little bit better. To change the angle, there's a circle down here. Now the lines are vertical, so go up and down, which is preferred. There are also some more experimental options, like circular. If we choose circular, as the name implies, we have circles in the image. Or if we choose color, then it separates it into different CMYK colors, which is more an artistic effect, not something that we can use for our rasterization needs. Back to monochrome, round. Now we are back to our dots. Here we can also change the angle. So instead of 90 degrees, I always recommend to go something like 30 or 45, which looks more natural. If you zoom in with 90 degrees, we can kind of predict where the lines goes. If we go something off 90 degrees, like 45, 30, it looks a little bit more natural. That's why I recommend it. Once we have our settings, we're going to close the window. And once we close the window, it's now time to inspect our rasterization dots. To do that, we zoom in. And as you probably remember, dark areas are getting rasterized stronger, so there are smaller dots there, and light areas are going to be rasterized less. Here we have just tiny dots, so it might be not as soft as we want it to be, in this area at least. If we look further away, here on the lower left corner, we also have a very thick, very solid area that we might want to rework. Looking at the trash panda outline, this here should create a nice fade. Zoom in. And there are not enough rasterization dots, so we're going to rework that. To rework our rasterization dots, we're going to the black and white adjustment. Here we have the color slider. And if you remember, the trash panda outline was magenta, so if we move the magenta slider to the left, we can see that the rasterization effect is more prominent and it creates a nice fade. The same here with the magenta and pink fog background. If we move it back to the right, it's becoming more solid again. The same effect happens on other areas with different colors. So if we move the blue slider, something will happen. To truly understand this, I have prepared a simple example with just 4 squares: magenta, cyan, yellow, and a green to yellow fade. And we're going to use the very exact same settings as we did with the other image. So black and white filter, everything black and white, just we keep it at 100. Then we're going to live filter, halftones, and we use the very exact same settings as before. Now we do have 4 rectangles, all with very minimal rasterization, and we're going to rework this. So reworking the same way as before, black and white adjustment, we have our sliders, and if we move the magenta slider all the way to the left, we can see that the rasterization dots become stronger or less strong depending how we move the slider. The same with the blue. With blue nothing happens because there's no blue in the image. With cyan, only the cyan block will have more or less rasterization dots. With yellow, the yellow block plus the yellow part of the green-yellow fade will have increased rasterization dots. If we do it the same way with the green part, so yellow back to 100 and the green part reduced, we can see that the green part gets more rasterization dots. So this is a really nice way to adjust the rasterization to our likings for our image. With that knowledge, we are now going back to our image. Here it is. And we want to have the really solid areas not to be as solid, so we want to increase the rasterization dots over here. So a magenta part, we're going to move it slightly to the left until we are happy with the amount of dots. Same with blue, same with cyan. And we are going to do this with all our colors until we are happy with the amount of rasterization dots created. Here's a close-up of an area that was solid before. Now we have a nice even layer of rasterization dots. This layer with rasterization dots is just black and white, so we want to get our color back in. To do that, we're going to deselect all the non-rasterized layers, so like the trash panda text down here and also the black background. Once that is done, we're going to right click on the halftone layer and then we select Merge Visible. If we use Merge Visible, this will create a new pixel layer. This pixel layer cannot be changed anymore, which we need for our next step. We're also going to deactivate the halftone and black and white adjustment layer. And we can also reactivate the colors of our text layers. We're going to pull down the pixel layer just underneath the black and white adjustment and the halftone layer. Just like that. And then we're going to right click on our pixel layer and we are looking for Rasterize to Mask, which is right over here. Rasterize to Mask will knock out all the black elements in our design and also will fill the white elements that we had with the color layer that's down here in the group, the third from below. This one over here. So now we have to reactivate the background just to see it. Now we have the black background reactivated and also the colors coming through from the color layer. If for some reason the colors don't appear, just copy the color layer and place it right above the background. Everything that is below that mask layer is used to give the mask color. So if we deactivate it, you can see the color disappear. A better example here on the raccoon. If I deactivate it, the image is still there, but the colors is gone. Now if I place a rectangle, this here is a red one, just above the mask, you can see the full rectangle. If I place it underneath the mask, the red will only appear where the mask is, where all the light parts were. So I can also use this rectangle and just recolor it to magenta, to pink, to white, whatever we want. This is how the mask works. So our rasterization job is essentially done. We can see that the light areas have smaller holes than the dark areas are almost completely knocked out, and wherever there is a transition from light to dark, like the trash can rim or here the glow effect outside of crew, there is a nice transition from large holes to small holes, which creates this nice fade-in effects into our shirt. Rasterization will always remove a part of the image. If we remove a part of the image, we will always lose some image vibrancy. We can counter this by increasing the vibrancy and the saturation on the leftover image. To do this, we're going to click on this circle here for our adjustments and we look for an option that is called Vibrance, which is up here. This will open the slider menu with just two sliders and we're going to the right. If we're going to the right, we can see that the colors will reappear and will be a little bit oversaturated, which counteracts the loss in color. In our example, we have the adjustment layer sitting on top of all layers, so we affect all layers with our adjustment layer. If you want to, you can also create individual adjustment layers for every individual layer and make the adjustments where you see fit. Once you're happy with all your adjustments, we are going to export it to import it into ProRib later on. So we're going to deactivate the background because we don't want to print that. Click on File, then Export, and export in our preferred file format. I hope you did find this video useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. To finish up this video, let me just show you what my shirt looks like after I applied it to the garment. Thank you and bye bye.
Every night at midnight, underneath the moon, there's a creature called a ring-tailed American raccoon. At night he walks his tricky walk, if you should see him there, with little hands and burglar masks, just like a panda bear, trash panda.